So the typical forms or methods to use during field research or user research. There's principally three different types. The first is secondary research. And secondary research is also what we call desk research, and essentially it's all the research that you can do at your desk. You can do research of existing studies, what other cases have existed that are similar to your business or idea, what is the news saying about the context that you're about to enter into, is there any academic literature that's useful, and so you're really collecting all the information that you can collect outside of having to do field research. The second type are interviews. And within interviews, you have different types of interviews that you can be doing, but pretty much interviews of individuals or groups. And the types of interviews we talk about aren't questionnaires, and so you're not going to necessarily prepare a list of 10 questions and ask each one after another. They're much more like conversations, and in fact we call them semi-structured or narrative interviews. And the reason why we call them that is because you have a bit of a structure, you have some questions you're asking or themes that you want to address, but you're also sort of opening yourself up to a conversation, and so you're allowing yourself to be able to ask why, and most importantly you're allowing yourself to be able to ask for stories. And then lastly, you have observations, and observations you can do in which people know that you're observing them, or observations you can do in which people don't know that you're being observed, and so you understand the context a bit more realistically. In both cases, you're essentially sitting down and you're observing a context, and you're seeing what happens. The advantage of what we call participant observation, or when people know you're observing them, is that you're able to ask questions to the people in the space. And so when I was observing an ambulatory room, the doctor knew I was observing him, and so I was able to ask him questions around things that were happening. In the context of non-participant observation, you're really seeing the case of what's happening in reality. So I've done that with the waiting room. I've sat down and I've pretended to wait along with other people, and I've seen what their experiences was like and what was happening. They didn't know I was observing them, but it helped me understand what the real context was. And then there's other types of observations. One that we use a lot is shadowing, in which I sort of follow a day in a life in someone, and so that means I exist next to them. I pretend to be a nurse, or I pretend to be a receptionist, or I sort of pretend to follow someone when they're trying to complete a task, and in doing that I see a little bit of how they complete that task, or a little bit of the challenges they might face. And the last type of observation is called a service safari, and that's where I assume or I pretend to be a user of a service by actually going through the service or experience myself. And so in that case, if that's sometimes about, if let's say your topic is around transport, then you're going to, even though you maybe have used transportation before, you're going to use transport as an observer. And so really looking and being open to all the different things and challenges that you're seeing as a user of that service. And there's actually a fourth type as well, and that fourth type are generative methods. And those are methods that you can use in order to help people generate new ideas to understand them better. And those can come in different forms. Oftentimes I'll use cards, and so I write down different emotions, or write down different parts of the service or that you're looking to understand deeply, and I'll use that as a way of helping people understand, speak to their own experiences. Other times I'll have materials like Play-Doh and Lego and like arts and crafts materials, and what that lets me do is put that in front of the person that I'm interviewing and ask them, very generative questions. Can you design me with the best possible services? Can you design me a solution to the issues that you were talking to me about? And the idea is not to necessarily use those. I mean, sometimes people might have good ideas, but the idea is not to necessarily use those in your own solution, but to understand deeper. And the important thing to understand is it's a mix. So in a research session, you might come in doing an observation, interviewing someone, and then maybe guiding them through a creative participatory method. And so I'm giving you these different methods as individual, but the idea is that you're sort of going into a research session and hopefully doing a mix of them.